Hey everyone, it's Perry, and this video has been festering for 5 years. And today I can finally tell you all my story on how I was sexually assaulted by two boys who I thought were my friends. If this subject matter is triggering to you, I beg you click off now, for I will go into as much detail as I can. Because of the serious matter in this video, I will be removing my Perry sprites, and it will just be my voice and my art you always see. Because this case is now public access and the boys are now grown adults, I will give their real names. They go by Victor and Jose. I'm gonna go off way before I met them. Some things may seem irrelevant, but I promise they are important to my story. With that, I feel I should start from the very beginning. My parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. My father sat me down calmly, explained the situation. He left me with my mom, and I saw him on weekends the rest of that year, till it became just a summer visit. He let my mom keep the house, her car, everything she needed to take care of me. Then my mom tried dating again, and she met my little brother's father. He lived 30 minutes away from our living space at the time, and after maybe a year or so, it was arranged that me and my mom move in with him and his kids. I didn't have a say in the arrangement. There was room for him and his kids to move in with us. There may not have been a shed for him to put his things, but prior to this arrangement, he helped my grandfather build a new shed for him. I don't see why another one couldn't have been built. I had to get rid of a lot of important things. Most importantly, my cat brother. This cat had been with me since I was 1 year old. I grew up with this cat. He was my sleep buddy. I spoiled him with human food. This cat literally played with me like another kid. Played tag, hide and seek. But he made my mother get rid of him. Gave him to an older woman who already had maybe 4 other cats. I knew the day she was gonna get rid of him, but I didn't know what time. I got home from school that day and he was just gone. I never got to say goodbye to my first ever friend. Once my mother and I moved in, I did have my own space. Before we moved in, her boyfriend at the time had to put up a new wall in the house to make a new bedroom. Since we were moving from a 3-bed to a 2-bed, he put up a wall in the sitting room to give me more privacy. As my room, when we would visit, was just where the living room is now. The issue to me is that when we moved mid-school year. I really wish we had finished that year where I was and just moved to a new middle school, since the environment would have been different anyway. But no, my 5th grade year was in 2 different schools. I used to be close with one of his sons, and we were in the same grade level. There were only 2 classes with 5th graders at that school, so I decided I want to be in his class as he was the only one I knew. And it would help me feel better coming into contact with new people. In this class is where I met Victor. I had a crush on him instantly. The teacher's aide warned me not to communicate with him, as she said in her own words that he was trouble. Every single day for the last 5 years, I wish I listened to her. Victor and I started a little playground dating thing, but this year should have been an indication for me of what kind of person he really was. He's a sadistic manipulator. I believe we broke up about 3 times just in that year. When we were broken up, he would poke at me, bully me, hurt me. One time in our class, when we were broken off, he was playing with a stapler at our table. He was right across from me, and he had the stapler open. He pressed the head of the stapler, and a staple flew out and hit me right in the neck. Thankfully, it didn't lodge, but it hurt so bad. Another thing he did was out in the hall after the school was over with, as I was walking to the bus. He was just standing there, I just wanted to walk by, but I passed at the right pace, at the right time, for him to stick his leg out and trip me. And what really sucks is no one believed me he did it, and everyone thought I just fell. He managed to manipulate the whole grade to make me believe I was crazy or a liar. This level of bullying from him led me to vent my anger towards him. He even would take the mental abuse up higher and try flirting and claiming he was with my friend at the time. So I drew. My art is how I vent, and the piece in this video is a vent piece of the pain and torment Victor put me through all these years. No teacher was notified, even when Victor saw them. My own mother can attest this. She said she was never called or notified somehow that I had done any of it. And I was never sent to the office or even talked to in the hall. The pictures I made that year were of Victor causing physical harm to me, literally stabbing me in the back, as that's how it felt he did to me. 6th grade comes around, and this is where I meet Jose. I didn't know he was already friends with Victor at the time, but I guess for him, he instantly liked me as I did Victor. Jose never made it known to me. He never communicated it in any way that year. But in the meantime, I was still trying to get back with Victor. In reality, there was 4 of us. Me, Jose, Victor, and another guy who was not involved in this case and I no longer communicate with. So I'm going to call him Eddie. They were my 3 guys I would hang out with. Eddie was my rock. I never once made that clear to him, and I regret every single day not letting him know how much his friendship meant to me. But at the time, he liked me too, and he made it known, unlike Jose. I was clear with Eddie that I didn't see him that way, and he understood and dropped it. The whole thing with Victor, how he treated me, it made me so angry. I loved him, but I hated him. I would draw more pictures of anthropomorphic cats and ponies, which were self-inserts of me pretty much having Victor on an operating table, wide awake, with his guts exposed. It was how I vented. Some people do journals or diary entries, others write poetry, others make music. I drew my pain and my emotions. Then, 7th grade. Victor got held back, so he was still in 6th grade, where Eddie, Jose, and I went on. Jose had moved to a different school, so it was just me and Eddie. Victor and I had continued an on-off relationship. I can't recall all that happened as I was more focused on the bullying I was getting since middle school started. It just kept getting worse. Knowing this, all of 7th grade was just a blur, as I was just going day by day, surviving. Eddie, as I said, was my rock. He took my abuse, knowing it was from my own pain. He comforted me, not Victor. Eddie helped me, not Victor. Eddie was there for me, not Victor. However, there were a few things that stood out to me the most that year. Firstly, Victor invited me to his sister's quinces. Both me and Eddie were invited. I don't recall seeing Jose there, however. But Victor invited me. He wanted me there. He danced with me. He sat at my table. He kissed me on the side of the building. He wanted me there. But the second day that stood out was field day. For those who don't know what field day is, it's an outside spring event near the end of the year where all the kids go outside, where activities are to play, snacks to eat, and some drinks. And the day prior, Victor asked for me back. Knowing the dumbass I am, I agreed. The whole field day, I followed him like a lost puppy. At the football field, he asked me to stay where I was, and he would be right back, so I did. I sat on the bench, in the hot sun, no money for a drink, and waited for him to come back. A few of my friends passed by a while later and saw I wasn't looking well. One of them notified our gym coach and said I was looking a little pale. Or at least more pale than what I normally am. I said I was feeling dizzy and there was a pain in my chest. They walked me back inside, lifted my shirt up, and placed me on the cold hallway floor with a water bottle under my neck. What I had experienced was, thankfully, a mild sunstroke. But where did Victor go? He was at the top of the bleachers, where there was shade, flirting with another girl we knew. The day after he asked for me back, while he pretty much left me to die. I've had enough. I was done with him at that point. This was also the point where my mom finally was able to get me out of that school and transfer me due to my bully issue. And where do you have it? I transferred to the same school Jose did. The 8th grade was objectively the best year of my life after my parents' divorce. I met a good friend who I still have contact with today. The same one who drew with me, watched anime with me, introduced me to Homestuck, K-pop, and new anime to watch. Her and a larger group of friends that consisted of 3 other girls and 3 boys. One I ended up dating, but I was probably his first girlfriend, so he didn't know what to do. He wouldn't even hold my hand. I don't blame him, though. He was a good kid. I can only hope he turned out to be a good man today. This was also the year where Jose's feelings for me were first brought to my attention. I never liked him that way, and I made that clear with his friends, but I somehow got peer pressured into being with him. Jose ended up taking me to homecoming, which was our 8th grade dance. However, soon after, I made it clear to him that I just didn't see him that way. It just felt right to have him as a friend and nothing more. I ended up moving away when high school was approaching. I wanted a chance to live with my dad, and I only saw him during summer break at that point. And with the verbal abuse from my now stepdad, if I were to get in trouble, I'd rather get in trouble for something I actually did. But that too turned out to be a mistake. The year prior, over the summer, I got in trouble for sending nudes over an app called Kik to guys I met on Omegle. My phone was taken the entire summer, but the next summer, with 3 bags full of my stuff, it was the same thing. This time, both of my phones were taken, and my 3DS. I was forced to smash my tablet with a hammer. I could no longer watch YouTube, even on the TV, unless my sister was in control of it. And I could no longer watch certain channels on cable. This wouldn't matter if a movie was on and they knew I watched, allowed me to watch. I'm still angry about this. I found one of my favorite movies, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. They had it on DVD years prior. They allowed me to watch it and know that I love that movie. However, it was on HBO. Specifically because it was on HBO, when they came home and they saw the channel, they switched it to damn Paw Patrol. I was 15, not 5. It was humiliating. So much happened at home. But I was happy at school. That school was an actual escape from the prison I was forced to call home. I had a great group of friends in each class. I loved most of my teachers, and with the one who we didn't get along, I never really hated his class since firstly it was science. I love science. And my project table had 2 of said friends in it, so it was okay. I had seniors who claimed me as their freshmen in drama class. Yeah, you heard me. Class. A whole hour during the school day specifically for drama. I loved that class, especially when it was the same room as the chorus room and that was my next class, so I didn't need to move. I did have crushes, especially one guy named Austin. I knew he didn't like me back, but he still hung out with me during lunch. I would be flirty, but he never rejected me, just never reciprocated. It's embarrassing to say, but I still remember how he smelled. It was intoxicating. I seriously want to know the cologne he wore so I can tell Nightmare to start wearing it. But as the days went by, home life got worse and worse, till one day I broke down in math class. I confessed everything to the teacher, and my dad told me I needed to talk to someone. How was I supposed to know that didn't include a trusted teacher? I told her everything. Why I was grounded, the level of grounding, how I didn't even want to eat anymore. Police got involved. My stepmom told me years later that the police told them that either I get mentally evaluated or her other kids will be taken away due to my actions of sending my nude photos. I was 14 to 15. I was sent to a mental ward for a week. I was scared. I was hurt. I felt betrayed. But you know what? I actually kind of liked it there. Until I found out what they had to say about me. I thankfully had my own room. I had some friends that I made, and no one there was really off-the-wall bonkers, just dealing with similar issues I was. We would watch movies, draw, other activities, and because it was a juvenile ward, we still had school stuff to do. And we would all get a maybe 30-minute session with the therapist every other day. I left 10 minutes after one of my friends got released. I hadn't seen her or our guy friend since then. I heard the woman talking to my dad and saying what they found out about me. She said I was manipulative, but that I didn't know I was. That I had a chemical imbalance. I'm still angry. Because I know something is wrong with me, and it took my high school counselor 2 years later to believe me. Note to everyone, don't go to a mental hospital in Florida. I was hit with the news that we were moving. My dad decided to move. And he was a total dick about telling us this too. It was over dinner and me and my sister were just having a laugh. I made a comment about Dad and that got my stepmom laughing and he pretty much was like, okay, we're moving. We'll laugh at that. Stepmom excused us and I heard Dad say that she was enabling us to target him and her response was that he just can't take a joke. But we moved. Soon after my 16th birthday. And what sucks is that a hurricane passed over the day before. So a lot of my friends couldn't come or assumed the party was off. At least I had 3 of my friends there and 2 at least stopped by to drop off my presents. The next school day though, the last friend who didn't show gave me my Perry plush. If you guys don't know by now, that plush is what my mascot is based off of. My last day at that school, I wore a plain white t-shirt and brought colored Sharpies, asked everyone I knew to sign it, and even kids who I never talked to wanted to sign my shirt. I still have this shirt. I look at it fondly, even if I was at that school for just 1 semester. So my father moved us away. But I said if we did move, I would go back home with my mom. And that's what I did. My father said he would hand my mom the electronics I still had, but I never got them. And claimed my 3DS got lost in the mail. I still don't believe this. I moved to a school where I knew a lot of the kids, and even Eddie was there. Some old friends from 5th grade, and some new friends that also came with new drama. I ended up getting into a different on-off relationship with someone we'll call Jordan. But it was only for the rest of that year. And I'd assume it's because of Eddie that Victor found out I was back. I don't remember how it happened, but he ended up inviting me to the fair. Can't remember if it was state or county, but a fair nonetheless. I was reluctant, but agreed. This was, of course, during my relationship with Jordan before our first breakup. Victor had me under his thumb. He knew he could just ask me to do anything, and I would do it, no questions asked. My mind was his slave. We rode some rides, ate some food, but when we saw the funhouse, we used a ticket and entered. When there was a blind spot, Victor saw the opportunity and kissed me. And the thing is, I didn't pull back. I allowed it. I kept it. But there were people behind us, so I urged that we keep going. That was the only blind spot, so he suggested we go again. We lied to the operator, saying we wanted to try and beat our time, just to go back to the blind spot and make out more. Once that time was up, due to the second group behind us, we both made the decision to find a secluded area. We found one. Behind the moving trucks. And we attempted to have sex. I say attempted because he was adamant on not going all the way in. His thinking was if it's just the tip, then he's still a virgin. I allowed this. And it was a trial for getting my nerves off when I had my first time with Jordan, roughly a month later. I know what I did. I regret what I did. But Jordan wasn't the best boyfriend either, so I don't feel too bad. I would say my situation with Jordan was just a distraction from Victor. But that just caused a whole different issue that if y'all want the tea from, then I'll share it some other time. I don't remember all of sophomore year. It was just as, if not more uneventful than 7th grade. I can say that this time was the time I started going over to Jose's house. My depressive state was still pretty bad, and I just wanted a shoulder to cry on. And he was just down the road. He would be that shoulder for me, and I appreciated it. But in these depressive episodes, I would spiral. And my spiral would tell me I'm not worth anything. I've been put here just to be a hole for men to use. That's all that I'm good for. So in a moment of self-loathing and knowing Jose's feelings, I used it. We ended up having sex, but it didn't feel right. I don't know if he felt it too, but to me it just didn't feel right. I would be at his house every now and then. 9 times out of 10, nothing sexual happened. We would just be in his room playing video games, or I would show him music videos I was into at the time. There were a few times Victor was there too. Once, Jose was not in the room, and Victor just went to town on me. Which was consensual. There was a threesome situation, which was also consensual, however, I was single at the time. My mother had been dealing with problems from her now husband and decided to move out, back into my grandparents with me and my half-brother. I ended up going to a new school junior year. My cousin was there, which was great, and some old friends I had before I moved in with my stepdad in the first place. Made some new friends and even ended up making a K-pop club with them. And I discovered I was related to one of the other chorus students who was also a furry. It's a distant relative, like 9 generations or so, but we had the question as our family crests look similar, and he did the research on his own in family books and stuff. At this time, I had 4 different relationships, 2 of them being online, and the 2 others were at the school. The event happened while I was in one of my online relationships. This is where I go into grave detail of the event that happened. This is your last chance to those who are sensitive to sexual assault. I advise you to click off now. It was April 6th, 2019. My mother still kept her job in the city we used to live in, so she had to drive 30 minutes. My brother wanted to visit his dad, and I had a cat at the house I wanted to see, so I went with him. This was around the time I heard about Ghibli Fest. I hope there's some people who remember that event. For those who don't know, Ghibli is an animation movie company with its own distinct style and very well-made stories, with well-rounded characters, delicious-looking food, beautiful backgrounds, everything. They are the company famous for My Neighbor Totoro. If you have never heard of Ghibli, you have at least seen this raccoon, cat, bear thing somewhere. Ghibli Fest was a year-round event in theaters. They would show nearly all the Ghibli films. I had asked a coworker if he wanted to go with me, as he loved Ghibli too. But he ended up not being able to pick me up and go. So while I was at my stepdad's house, I thought I'd ask Jose if he wanted to go and if his mother would take us. He said his mother liked me, so I just thought I'd ask. So I texted him about it, and he messaged me back saying if I wanted to ask, I could come over and ask, but Victor was there. I really don't like seeing Victor when I'm in a relationship after what happened when I was with Jordan, but I reluctantly agreed. Because he didn't live far, he said they would both walk down to my stepdad's house and pick me up. So I waited at the front porch as the front porch faced the main road. They would come up to my right, and we walked back that way. Once we made it back to Jose's house, it was your standard double-wide trailer. The front door would enter into the living room. To the left was the kitchen and his mother's room. And to the right was a hallway that led to his room, the bathroom, and his sister's room. Both of his sisters were watching TV when we came in and had made a pallet on the floor with blankets and pillows. There was a couch, so it was what they chose to do instead of needing to. Me and the guys entered Jose's bedroom, and I kicked my shoes off and sat on Jose's bed. Now, Jose's room was pretty small. He had a small dresser that doubled as a TV stand, and he had a full-size bed that was just the box spring and mattress, no bed frame. The bed had a blue blanket and an abstract pattern blanket instead of comforter covers, and 2 pillows. The bed was pushed to the corner of the room with a small black box to the left of it, acting as a small nightstand where he would keep his sunglasses and vape pen. On the wall, that was the same wall that his door was connected to, was a hook where he kept a leather jacket, and in between the two was his closet. Jose's mom wasn't home at this time, so I decided to play on my phone while I waited for her. The guys sat at the foot of the bed as they played games. They would switch between Fortnite and Black Ops. When Victor would play Fortnite, Jose would focus more on me. Just being a teenage boy and poking at me, teasing me. It was cute at first, but as it continued, I got more aggravated and was firm with him to stop. He would stop for a bit, but then continued poking me, trying to tickle me, but I just wasn't having it. I didn't realize when Jose's mom got home that she said food was ready. We all went out to the kitchen where his sisters were still watching their show. The guys grabbed a plate and I didn't feel very hungry, and it wasn't food I enjoyed anyway. So I stayed out with them for a bit, standing by the table and talking some. I needed Jose to be an interpreter for me, as his mother didn't speak very good English. So I just thought I'd wait for him to finish eating by taking a nap. I went back into his room, lay down on the bed, on my left side, and dozed off. I told this next part to the detective in the case, and he compared it to him being a father. He would also take a nap, but would still be aware of his surroundings, with having 3 kids. That was my situation. I was asleep, but I could hear and feel things. I felt someone sit at the foot of the bed, and felt someone sit on the edge of the bed next to me. I assumed it was Victor that sat next to me, as I could hear where the voices were coming from. I hear Victor say that he was going to fuck with me. I had assumed he meant mess with me, but I was wrong. As what fully got me awake was Victor unbuttoning my pants. Now, these pants were high-risers. They are designed to go over your stomach, so this pair had a zipper but 3 buttons. Victor was able to get 2 buttons off before I was able to push him away for a second to rebutton them. Then he grabbed me. I know how to turn you on. You know you want me. I tried kicking at him, but he would grab my legs. I tried hitting him, but he would grab my arms. He's nearly 6 foot, I'm 5'2". At the time, I was 160 pounds of fat, and he was nearly 190 pounds of muscle. He was stronger than me, but I still tried. I kept telling him to stop, to leave me alone, begging that I didn't want it that day. I had a boyfriend. He was able to pin me against the bed. My knees were on the floor with my thighs pressed against the bed. My legs couldn't move. He had my upper body laid out on the bed. When he had his hands next to me, I moved my head and bit him as hard as I could. But not hard enough, as I didn't draw blood. He didn't pull away either. You think that hurts me, he says. He didn't flinch. His wrist was still in my mouth as I bit harder. He just laughed. The only other thing I could think of was to call for help. So I yelled, hoping Jose's sister or his mother would hear me. But Victor covered my mouth. Not just my mouth, but my mouth and nose. He was suffocating me. I don't know if it was intentional, but I was scared he was going to kill me. I licked his hand as a last resort, but that did nothing either. So I gave up. At this point, Victor had my pants and underwear down to my knees. I looked over at Jose, who seemed more focused on his game than my desperate need of escape. Hearing his testimony in court, I didn't know this, but it came to my attention that he was getting high off cold medicine. And I remember seeing him take a swig at a bottle when we first got into his room that day. This is just my speculation, but I feel if he was sober, he would have helped me. Victor penetrated me. Repeatedly. It felt like an eternity. I just wanted it to be over. I buried my head in the bed, not wanting to look at anything, and, of course, I was moaning. An involuntary response to my pleasure points being pressed. But Jose said in his testimony that my moans that day were much different than the ones he'd hear when it was consensual. I was just thinking to myself, I thought they cared. I thought I mattered. It felt like 5 to 7 minutes till Victor stopped. And he only stopped because he was finished. He ejaculated on the hardwood floor. I just laid there. Victor told Jose it was his turn, so he tried. Jose went behind me and tried to penetrate me, but he couldn't. In his statement, he said he couldn't get it up. He then just tried to pleasure me with his fingers, but that turned out to be worse, as his nails scraped the inside of me. Jose said in his testimony that the vibe was just off. He knew I didn't want this, so he stopped. I still laid there, motionless. After a moment, I said nothing. I quickly put my pants back on and I texted my mom to come pick me up. It was 5:09 when I texted her. I arrived at Jose's house around 2. It took less than 3 hours. After I texted my mom, I put my shoes back on and felt a sharp pain in my uterus. I had to take a second. I spread my legs apart like I was part of a police search and placed my body facing and pressing against the closet door. My arms bent to cover my face, and I took deep breaths. This was the moment these boys, 'cause I would never call them men. This was the moment these boys started getting concerned for me, asking what I was doing, if I was okay. "I'm in pain, assholes," was all I could say. They left the room, and I took a second to collect myself. After a minute or two, I followed them outside. Jose's sisters were out there as well, with his mom in her car. And I just saw Jose and Victor wrestling like nothing happened. What sucks about all this is that they had somewhere to go right after all this. So I felt if I had fought just a little longer, it would have been avoided. But the second I walked outside was when my mom pulled up. They still want to act like nothing happened, with Victor trying to hug me, but I wasn't having it. I got in my mom's car without a word as she picked up my brother and took us back to my grandparents. It took me the rest of the day to figure this out. So the next day I told this to my cousin. She tried her best to convince me to tell my mom, but I was just too scared. A few more days go by and I noticed my period hadn't started yet. My flow is usually very punctual, so it aroused concern for me. I hadn't said a word to either of them until this day, where I asked if they were sure they had not come inside me. I became frantic with my questioning because I was scared. In Jose's testimony, he said Victor blocked me on both his and Jose's phone, leaving me to deal with this alone. My cousin and I would talk about this every day as I told her how I was feeling. She finally convinced me to tell my mom, as my period had been late an entire week. So I finally told my mom. It was just my cousin and her at home, and something I'd much rather avoid, seeing my mother cry. There may have been other reasons why I decided to wait so long, but this was the main reason. Who likes seeing their mother cry? My mom called the police right away, and I had my victim's statement on the 18th that month. The detective interviewed both Jose and Victor the same day. I want to believe the global reset had played a role, but it took 5 years to get this into court. Nearly the anniversary of the events, as the trial started this April on the 1st. And I just want to say, you have to be a real fucked up level of sociopath to know you have nothing that proves the defendant's innocence and try to make him look innocent by bashing the victim. To Victor's lawyer, I hate you. I don't care if you were just doing your job, I hate you. You tried to victim blame me. You tried to say I orchestrated the events of that day. You tried to say I was pitting two friends against each other. I'm not that attractive. And Victor never gave a damn about me. I wasn't pitting him against Jose if he couldn't care less if I was with him or not. I don't care if you were doing your job. You were trying to keep a monster on the streets. It's already been 5 years. Who knows what other victims he's had in that time? I just want to know how you sleep at night, knowing you were actively trying to keep a monster out of jail or prison. You're just as monstrous as he is. You, sir, had nothing on me. You had nothing to prove his innocence, and you know it. That's why you kept trying to tarnish my character, and then to go after my mother? So she was there the first day in court and not the second. My brother was home sick. And she's now a single mother. You will not
villainize my mother for needing to take care of an actual child. Leaving her 23-year-old adult daughter in court was okay to do, especially if I'm the one who told her to check on the kid.
It's your job to present facts and evidence, not direct attention away from the trial at hand by asking nonsense questions about things irrelevant to the case. My story and Jose's story lined up. That's right. Jose admitted to assaulting me. However, I had to drop the charges against him, because he is dealing with a different case much larger than mine. But now, why would he say this happened? Why would he admit to it? Because my attorney said if he had told the truth, the charges against him would have stayed dropped. At least that's what he said to me. And not only that, but he didn't need to come up at all. The charges would have stayed dropped had he said no to testifying. Jose's testimony lined up with his interview even 5 years later. My testimony lined up with my interview 5 years later. Victor is the only one who had said a different story. But in the end, it all came to justice. He was found guilty of second-degree forcible rape. Sentenced 4 to 10 years in prison without parole. And when he is out, he will need to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. And there was also a no-contact order for me. I know his family is going to hate me, but they need to realize that their son did this to me. I don't know how Jose's family feels, even though I saw them there in the courthouse the whole 4 days of the trial. Because Victor was found guilty, I'm taking it upon myself to not feel the need to show the interviews. Had he been found innocent, those interviews would definitely be played in this video. But now I don't have to. This just sucks. I trusted him. I cared for him. I loved him. And Victor knew this. He knew that my brain was a slave to him. He knew that anything he asked of me, I would do without any questions. That's why he thought he could get away with it. Because he thought I wouldn't say anything because of my feelings for him. I'm telling my story. I am sharing my experience. Because I hope another victim watches this, understands, and gains the courage to speak up. I'm telling this to, sadly, future victims. That there is nothing to be ashamed of. You are not at fault, no matter what the defense tries to make it out to be. You are not at fault. It's the fault, the decision of the individual who chose to attack you and not taking your no as an answer. The sad part is, most of these cases are done by people you know. And you have to acknowledge the wrongdoing, and the level of fight doesn't matter. You said no. That's what matters. If you can prove you said no and kept your no and prove they used force, then it's all you need. But again, I was grateful that I had one of them admit to the crime. I would suggest not to wash or throw away your clothes you wore of the event. I would suggest keeping a recording device if you go out or have someone over. I wish I had my phone recording the incident, so my no could have been heard and my cries for help. I hate to put people in defense mode, but it's for your own safety, your own protection. I'm just gonna say one more thing. To all my kittens. Your support is appreciated. You are loved. You're cared for. And I beg, please, if you are a victim of sexual assault, notify the authorities. Now. Please, stay safe.